Awesome. Okay, great. So I just want to thank you guys for coming in. This is week 6. The topic that we're going to talk about is how to make your first million. Um, I love this topic because I think more now than ever, people are looking at financial instructors. They're looking at all kinds of different mentors to get them to that goal. I'm just going to teach you the easiest way as real estate agents that you can get there, based on what I learned and based on the resources, that I had. And as I continue with the story and these action points, please chime in, unmute yourself, tell your story so people can learn from each other. It just works better in general. And let's get started. So, how do you make your first million? The biggest thing importance in your life is you have to put pen to paper, and you have to understand from a technological perspective, how is it that you can figure out a way to get your net worth to $1 million or more? Does anyone have, or has anyone read, pop your mic on, Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover? Anyone read
I've
that
made it
book?
halfway through it.
And what did you learn, Marissa?
I'm not a fan, I guess, of his approach. However, but it is makes much more sense though. I think the biggest thing is just you need to know what your money's doing and where it's at and have a name for everything. And I think that's the one thing I took away from it.
Anyone else read his book? No? Okay, good. Because what basically some of the stuff he teaches, you hit the nail on the head, is very dead on. And other things I think forces you to think small. And the biggest thing is your goal should not be to get to 1 million. Your goal should be to 5 million, because 5 million in today's society is true financial freedom. 1 million, having got there, does not make you feel rich. In fact, it makes you feel vulnerable. And once you feel vulnerable, your aspects and the way your thought process shifts and changes. So if you guys have your notepads and you're able to take notes now, step one is this. The first thing you have to do is you have to have an emergency fund. So raise your hand or pop your mic on if at this point in time you have at least $1,000 in cash.
Yep.
Can everyone participate? I want to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, I've
Okay.
got some.
Yep.
Great. Okay, that's step one. The next step, where a lot of people fail in American society, is you have to understand your debt structure. So pop your mic on. How many of you have consumer debts? That's a student loan, that's a car loan, that's a medical bill, etc.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Does everyone have consumer debt in the room? I assume
Majority of
that.
people do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, step one is you have to list your debts from greatest to smallest. I don't care how small it is, right? If it's a credit card bill, if it's a car payment, if it is a mortgage payment, any of those things are debts. Anything that you pay monthly consistently, those are debts. Okay, so you have to be diligent in the way that you address your debt structure. The biggest thing that you have to do to get to financial freedom, and this is going to sound crazy, but you have to eradicate all debts except for real estate debt. Okay? And we'll talk about why. So, consumer debt is the Ferris wheel towards financial depression and basic financial ruin. The biggest issue is so many people, when they graduate college or they graduate high school, you have credit card, people banging down your doors trying to sell you on the idea of credit. How many of you got your first credit card at the age of 18 or 19? Pop your mic on.
Oh yeah.
And what did you do when you got it for the first time, Lisa?
I went and bought the cutest pair of shoes that I desperately needed.
And did you ever carry a balance where they were charging you 17% plus month on your cash?
I think it was closer to 29.
Oh, God, that just makes me hurt even thinking about that. It's funny. Credit cards are a tool, and contrary to what Dave Ramsey teaches you, I think having credit cards are important, but I would only have two. So I would write that down. I only have two other than my debit cards. The first credit card I have is an American Express Platinum card. The reason I have that is because I love to travel, and the rewards are fantastic when it comes to travel, upgrades, things of that nature in general. But with American Express, if you guys have, American Express card, Platinum, Black card, whatever, the dynamics are it is a charge card. It is not a credit card. The difference between a charge card and a credit card is a charge card you have to pay off every single month. And if you don't, the interest rates are exorbitant. So, what you were talking about, Lisa, 29% is literally highway robbery. I mean, it is a disaster ruin dynamic. The second credit card I have is a Visa card that I actually got when I turned 19 years old. And I kept it because I wanted to build up my credit. How many of you charge with the idea and carry a balance with the idea to increase your FICO score? Pop your mic on.
Yep,
And why do you do that, Sam?
because that's what I was told to do.
Who told that to you?
I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. And FICO scores, I want you to think of your FICO score as simply a report card for the ability to borrow money for real estate. That is the only reason you need or want to have a FICO score, because consumer credit will destroy you. And the reason I know that is because, I loved cars. I loved nice clothes. I loved watches. And in my 20s, I owned some extremely expensive things that I couldn't afford. And I got in way over my skis when it came to purchasing things that I couldn't pay cash for. So this is what I encourage you to do. Again, after you list your debts from largest to smallest, step one is you have to eradicate your consumer debt. So as you're making money, doing high level activities, whether it be your rev share and or you selling houses or your group selling houses, I want you to attack your consumer debt. And I want you to get it to zero. If that takes 6 months, a year, year and a half, if you can be debt free other than real estate, you are ahead of 90% of the American populace. Did you know that most people in the United States have a minimum of $17,000 in credit card debt? Pop your mic on if you knew that statistic.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know how much interest credit card companies earn on $17,000?
Not an exact number, no.
So in $17,000, the average credit card company collects anywhere from 18 to 23%. That means in 5 years' time, that $17,000, if it's not paid, becomes $100,000 in debt for consumers. And that's why it is a disaster zone when it comes to building your net worth. So get to zero in your consumer debt. Now, here is a wealth building tool. I have looked at every category of wealth creation, every category: gold, silver, crypto, stocks, etc. The best and the safest way to build your wealth is real estate, hands down, especially because you guys have your real estate licenses. So you, more than ever, have the ability to acquire your own real estate and have it with the idea of, I'm going to own this in perpetuity, and I will show you exactly how to do that. So raise your hand if you guys own your own primary residence, or pop your mic on.
I do.
Yep.
I do as well.
And how many of you are renters?
Sorry, I missed the owning one, but yeah, I am.
So everyone in this room owns their own primary residence, correct?
Yes.
Not me.
Who said not me?
Brandon,
Brandon. Okay, how old are you, Brandon?
25.
25, okay. Now, is your goal to own your first primary residence here in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Well, in the upcoming 3 months.
Good man. Okay, good man. So this is where, see, this is the first step to financial freedom. But here are a few notes that you guys have to assess when you're buying your first purchase in real estate. When you look at real estate as a realtor, most of us, we hear this flipping, we hear all this VRBO, we hear all this stuff where we get in, we get out, we make a profit, etc. I want you to change your framework when you look at real estate. Look at it as if it were a spouse, your husband or a wife. And the reason I say that is because when you look at real estate, take notes on this, because I want you to think of owning a piece of real estate as something that you will own for the rest of your life, okay? And so when you buy a piece of real estate, don't think about it, I'm going to own this for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Think about you're going to own this for the rest of your life, and you're going to deed it to your children, and I'll tell you why. So as you buy your first primary residence, there are a few rules that you have to attain to make sure that it has a couple of different things. 1, appreciation, and 2, you're buying in the right location where there will be growth for many, many years to come. Most people buy a primary residence to live in their self, right? Pop your mic on if you bought your house with the idea of, I want to live in it rather than this is an investment.
Yep.
Yep.
But I mean, it's kind of both though in that way.
So I want you to think of every piece of real estate that you buy in both lenses. 1, this is an amazing investment in an amazing area that rents will appreciate in the next 5, 10, 15 years, regardless of macroeconomic circumstances. And if I have to, I don't mind living in it as well. Now, as you have a family and you have children, it comes up with a lot of issues and excuses because spouses sometimes want bigger homes. They want bigger yards, they want pools, they want spas, they want all these extremities. But your home is either a huge asset or a huge liability. And so I will teach you exactly step by step how creating your own real estate portfolio will get you to that $1 million process as quickly as possible. So when I graduated from college at 22 years old, I studied so many people when it came to wealth creation. And the first thing that I did was I got my real estate license when I was 18. Got into the flipping business with my father. And from basically 2011 to about 2015, we flipped over 165 homes in the state of Arizona. And we were averaging probably about 8 to 9 a month. And what I realized was we were making some money, we were losing some money, we were breaking even on some houses. But what I realized, the people that made the most money were the people that held real estate in perpetuity. And so the first house that I bought was 23 years old. And if you have your notes, I encourage you to write this down. The first house I bought, if you're familiar with Arizona real estate, I bought in Desert Ridge, where the 51 meets the 101. And I bought that home at 23 years old. I paid $257,000 for that house. And I was scared to death. How many people were so afraid when they bought their first house? Pop your mic on.
Yes.
Terrified. Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're terrified because you don't know how you're going to make your mortgage payment, right? How many had the cold sweats before they had to write the check to title?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And our first mortgage was $1,000 a month. That was PITI. And it's scared. Like, how are we going to feed the babies?
It's so scary. And that's the thing, when you make that leap of faith, you're believing in yourself. And I'll tell you, making that one move and making myself feel uncomfortable changed the whole trajectory of my life. So I paid $257,000 for the house. I put 5% down, but I got 3% back because of my commission. So again, I only put 2% down on that house to acquire it when I first acquired it. I wouldn't recommend you do that. I'll tell you why moving forward. But basically, I came up with $8,800 to close that house and with the intent of living in it, okay? Here's rule number 1. You always want to acquire a primary residence loan. And the reason when you buy residential real estate to begin your real estate journey, you want to make it a primary residence to start is because you're going to have better rates. you're going to have better terms, and you're going to have long-term debt that is going to be more beneficial to you in the future. So I would write this down. If you're looking to buy your first house or possibly your second, this is the terms you want to look for. You want to put a minimum 10% down. I like 10% because it doesn't I don't have to bring a lot of cash to the table. And in the conventional space in Arizona in 2022, they're raising the conventional limit to, I think, 625,000. So 10% down, you want a 30-year fixed loan, and you want to buy down the rate. Does everyone know what I mean when I say buy down the rate? Pop your mic on.
Pay points.
Yep.
Correct. So you want to make sure that you have a long-term fixed rate where it is the lowest interest rate possible for the longest amount of time. A lot of people ask me, why aren't you doing a 15-year fixed loan with 20% down? Because A, it's too cash intensive for the first purchase that you have. And B, if your financials change in the next 5, 10, 15 years, you won't be able to carry that significant mortgage payment. But at any time, if you want to pay down a 30-year fixed loan and treat it as if it were a 15-year, you can do that. So the second thing that you want to do when you buy your first property is you want to make sure it is a value add property. Does anyone know what a value add property is? Raise your hand or pop your mic on.
Yep.
What is it?
Just one where you can add some sort of value as far as like new paint, fresh cabinets, whatever, something small to increase value.
Absolutely. So you want to see where they call that a wedge deal. And a wedge deal is you can do things that are cosmetic without changing the footprint to increase the value of the property rather quickly, right? So that first property that I bought for $257,000, I changed out the countertops, changed out the flooring, repainted the whole house, pretty basic stuff. I think I only paid like an extra $8,000 to do that. So if you're doing your math, I'm $16,000 into a $257,000 asset, right? Now, I had the intention of moving in the property. So as a primary residence, you have to sign a waiver with the mortgage company that basically says for the next year, you intend to live in this property. If you don't do that, it is mortgage fraud. We don't want you to do that. So my intention was to live in this property. However, the more I looked at it, my business was starting to take off a little bit. I didn't want to live in it. I wanted to rent it out. So I carried the mortgage for 6, 7, 8 months. And my mortgage at the time, if you want to write this down, was $1,150 a month. Okay, I was 23 years old. And 7, 8 months in, I said, you know what? I'm going to rent this property out and see what happens. So it was newly painted. It was nice. The market was pretty good. I was late 23 years old at this point. And I put it on the market for $1,900 a month. And to my surprise, in about a month's time, it rented for $1,885 a month. So if anyone's doing any math, how much is my spread now every single month in this rental property?
Almost 1,700. 700.
Correct, 700. That's exactly right. So imagine if you're 23 and you're now making an extra $700 a month, right? You start getting excited. You're like, wow, this real estate thing really starts to work, right? And you have a good tenant in there. You make sure that you're attentive because in the first one, you are so scared and you don't know what you're going to do, right? You just want to make sure that they keep paying. So that was my first primary residence purchase, okay? I paid $257,000 for that house, okay? My cost basis was probably $263,000. Now, fast forward 9 years later, that house is now worth, let me look at my notes here, $545,000, okay? And I own that free and clear. So I want you to write that number down. And if anyone can do the math, how much equity do I have from $545,000, take out $257,000 of what I originally paid? Number, to make it easy for you, should be $288,000, correct? You guys following
Yep.
me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Now, the reason this is important is now, let's fast forward 8-9 years. I own this property free and clear, but I'm trying to tell you from a linear fashion, right? What were the first steps? And the biggest first step is, number one, you got to eradicate your consumer debt. I didn't have any consumer debt before I bought my first house. Number two, you have to buy your first primary residence, okay? Now, this is where most people stop. How many of you think about, okay, if I didn't have consumer debt and I own my primary residence, I feel rich? Raise your hand. Pop your mic on.
That's the American dream, isn't it?
That's what people think the American dream is, but the problem is you're still broke, and I'll tell you why. Because you don't have the drip coming in every single month that's paying you in passive income. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that is the biggest fault of most people, is they think owning your home free and clear and having no consumer debt makes you feel free. And I can tell you it certainly does not, because the problem is you still have to have earned income to live your life, right? To travel, to buy food, etc. So let's fast forward. I'm 23, now 24. I'm making an extra $700 a month. I'm making equity. At this time, I think I'm worth probably $100,000, which is pretty exciting for a 24-year-old. How many of you are in your mid-20s in the room right now? Pop your mic on.
Late 20s now, unfortunately, Michael.
And Brennan, you're worth, I think, over $100,000, right?
Yeah, from an investment property purchase and EXP stock, yeah.
And how does $100,000 make you feel? Be honest.
Definitely better. I didn't count it up for a long time, so when you started talking about count your net worth, I had a general figure in my head, but once I added it all up, I was pleasantly surprised at my number. And yeah, it strokes the ego a little bit for sure.
So then, to add off of what Brennan's story was, I was, 24 years old, worth about $100,000, had some cash, had my little one property. And this, I want you to write down. This is the revenue generator that makes you worth $1 million to several $1 million. Most people fall into two categories that kill them when it comes to net worth generation. You guys ready? Are you pumped? Are you writing your notes? Number one, they live in their primary residence forever. Now, I want you to own your primary residence forever. I do not want you to live in your primary residence forever, because in 30 years, if you've only acquired one property, you have hindered your ability to duplicate and multiply. I want you to write that down. Duplicate and multiply. Real estate is definitely a system that you have to duplicate and multiply, okay? The second thing that is a huge hiccup for most people when it comes to real estate investment, how many of you fall into this category? Oh my goodness, I've lived in my house 2 years. It's gone up in value. I want to sell it and pull the money out. How many of you have fallen victim to that? Pop your mic on.
Yeah, about 20 years ago, yep. And we used to call it, when I was an escrow officer, we used to call it using your real estate as an ATM.
Anybody else? The reason I bring that up and the problem with it is you never want to kill the golden goose. Your real estate assets are your golden geese for your asset column. They're going to keep laying eggs for the rest of your life and keep generating more and more income. And so you want to make sure that when you buy a piece of real estate, number one, it's an amazing A+ location. If you can't afford to be in the locations that you want to be with unbelievable exponential growth, don't buy it in the first place. The second thing that you want to buy is something that's manageable. So a single family home, a townhouse, something that doesn't have a lot of upkeep because you want it to be, which is third, rentable. Okay? So those are the three things you want to look at when you buy your first primary residence. Don't look at it as this is what my husband, my wife, my kids want. Look at it as this is going to be a sound investment for my family and myself 30, 40, 50 years from now. So let's go back to 25. Worth $100,000. I buy my second house. I'm in the flipping business at the time. So I buy my second house for $245,000. I had a little bit more cash then, so I put 20% down, which was a mistake because it ate up a lot of my cash, but there was a renter already in place. Now, why is it, looking back, that was a bad deal? Anyone want to pop their mic on?
You had a renter in there.
That's a good thing, but the bad problem is the terms on my mortgage weren't as good because I bought it as a rental property as opposed to a primary residence. If I had bought it with the intent of living in it and then renting it out, my interest rate would have been a lot lower and my payment every month would have been a lot lower. So that's why the loan is just as important as the property. So keep that in mind. But you're right. I had a tenant in there. The tenant was paying me $1,500 a month, and my mortgage payment was, I believe, about $1,100 a month. And no, the first house I bought was with the intent of me living in it, but I didn't like it to live in because I was too ego-driven, so I rented it out after 8 months, to answer your question. But the second property was an investment property. And let's fast forward here. Again, I'm 24 now. And now to this, I'm 32. This house is now worth, let me look at the price. I just looked it up yesterday. This house is now worth $445,000. And the rent basically went from $1,500 and now I'm renting it for $1,900 a month. Okay. So let's fast forward, right? So now I'm getting a little momentum. You know, I'm making, let's say, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a month in passive income. I own 2 houses, and now my net worth is starting to climb. And this is where it gets exciting. The third rule, as I said before, is multiplication and duplication. Where most people fail is they're not buying and adding to their real estate portfolio every 2 to 4 years. And if I couldn't tell you anything in any market, Grant Cardone will tell you the same. Every 2 to 4 years, as often as you financially possibly can, no matter if the market's up, no matter if the market's down, no matter if the market is sideways, I want you to think about adding a piece of real estate to your portfolio every 2 to 4 years. If you can do that, with the idea of holding it in perpetuity, you will be a very rich man or a very rich woman. I promise you that. So now I'm 25 years old. My net worth probably jumps from 100 grand to probably about 350 to 400 grand, right? Making a little more money, selling some more houses, etc. Let's look at Brandon's comment. I'm thinking about making a move this year. Brandon, ask your question. Pop your mic on.
Yeah, so since I'm living on a mobile home currently and I'm paying like basically nothing to live here, I was thinking because I got like about 60, 70, 80 grand saved up. I was thinking of making a move, but I'm not sure if I should just buy like a multifamily and just rent it all together or buy something personal or a single family.
So let's walk through this system for you, Brandon. Have you eradicated all your consumer debt?
Yes.
So you
Zero debt.
have no other debt other than
No car payments, no nothing.
Great job. Good job. The next thing that you want to do following this system is you have your 80 grand, right? Are you living in Arizona?
Yep.
So where do you live in Arizona? Tucson?
Tucson.
What is the best area to live in Tucson?
I would say, well, the north side.
Where do all the rich people live that pay the highest rents?
What was that?
Where do all the rich people live in Tucson that pay the highest rents?
I would say north side still.
Okay.
Or probably downtown.
Great.
Downtown for
Awesome.
for
So this is what I want you to do. You have $80,000 in cash, right? I want you to look for a house, which I know you can find because I'm somewhat familiar with the Tucson market, having a partner down there. I want you to look for a house that's either a single family house and or a townhome that you can buy for $400,000. That's a value add property. You think you could find that in Tucson?
What about income wise? Because I'm probably not going to be able to show for it as far as income and loan.
So have you done your taxes the last 2 years and shown a gross income to grow to be able to qualify for the loan?
Well, this is my second year in real estate. So this year when I run my taxes, I'm already pre-programming and thinking that I might be able to qualify for somewhere around 250, 280.
Can you buy a home that's a single family home and or a townhouse in a great area in Tucson for 280 to 300 grand?
Okay.
Can you? And if you can't,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay. If you
Yeah,
can,
putting 20% down, I would say.
don't put 20% down. Put 10% down.
Yeah, because I still got the option of putting 3.5 because it's gonna be my first house.
Okay. That's good. That's good long-term debt. 3.5, I'm telling you guys, inflation right now is like 5 or 6%. You go to the gas station recently, you go buy food. How much has prices gone up across the board? Pop your mic on.
$1.
A lot.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to hedge
Yeah.
against inflation?
Investing.
Real estate. Real estate. Because as prices go up around you, what happens to real estate values?
They go up.
That's right. So the thing that's amazing about you owning a piece of real estate initially that you can live in is, number one, you're not using all your cash. So let's say you buy a $300,000 house and you're only using $30,000 as a down payment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now you still have $50,000 left over. So if you're following the system, you have the ability to do a wedge deal or a value add deal, which means that you want to buy something that you can add countertops to, you know, put some nice flooring in, maybe paint it, put an extra $10,000 in there, right? So that makes that $300,000 house now worth $330,000. You following me?
Yep.
Okay, now what I want you to do is live in that house and enjoy that house for, let's say, 8 to 10 months as you grow your income. You think you could do that?
Most likely. Yeah.
Okay, and then what you're going to do, what's the hottest time to rent a place in Tucson market? January when it's cool?
I would say, yeah.
So
Yeah,
let's
after
say,
all the holidays.
yeah, so
And
let's
taxes
say,
are coming in.
let's say you buy a place by January, February of 2022. You live in it a year, and in February of 2023, you rent that house out, similar to what I did in my first two properties, and you're going to make a spread on that mortgage versus you rent. Does that make sense? You're going to probably make $500-$600 a month on that spread. Would you agree?
Yep.
And then your income is going to probably be better. And so what are you going to do when you have more income and you're making more money on your tax return?
Well, I would show for more income,
You're
right?
going to
And
buy
be
another
able to
property.
afford them.
You're going to buy another property as you accumulate enough
Isn't
money
it?
for another down payment.
Are you supposed to, in order to count that income, be a landlord for 2 years?
1 year. So if you have a season lease and you have a lease over 12 months, you can take in Arizona, lending statutes, you can take basically that lease. It has to be a long-term lease, a year or more, and they will give you 70% of income value on that monthly statement towards your income, which is a huge deal.
Okay, and that's the I would say that's the cash and cash, right? So 70% of the cash and cash return.
Well, your cash on cash return is going to be humongous. I mean, let's go back to your initial deal. I mean, so let's say you put $30,000 into buying your first house, right? You put another $10,000 into fixing it, so that's $40,000, right? And what are you
Yep.
earning in profit every single month? Let's say $500. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Okay, so what's $500 times 12? Do you know? $6,000.
60,000, 6,000 bucks.
$6,000. So what's $6,000 divided by 40,000?
I don't know. Let me check.
You got to be good with the numbers. That's how you get rich.
6,000 divided by what?
40,000. 6,000
Oh.
divided by 40,000.
Divided by 40,000. 15%.
15% return. That's your cash on cash return right there. Would you say that's a pretty good investment?
Of course.
But listen to this. that money that you're making, that $6,000 a month, is taxed differently. So you're not going to pay a lot of taxes on that $6,000 income. And what's going on with the value of the house?
Appreciation.
Boom.
Internal
So your
rate of
realized return is more like 22 to 25% now a year. Now, what investment vehicle that you can do that you can earn 25% a year safely like that?
No,
None. Zero. Zip. Nada. Doesn't exist.
Nada.
So let's go back to my story, because I know you guys want to learn about. Yep, exactly. Don't forget the depreciation you can claim. Yeah, so that's exactly why your taxes are different on a rental. So we'll get into that later in the hour, but basically it's just a golden goose, a flywheel effect that keeps making you more money. So let's go back to my story, because I think you did a great job for sharing. Thank you for that. But so I'm 25 now. I got 2 houses, right? I'm now worth $300,000 or $400,000 on paper. And I start making a little more money, and I start having the idea of, I need to live in the area where the richest of the rich live in Arizona. How many of you in Arizona know where Arcadia is? Pop your mic on.
Yep.
Now, why is it important to live in a really high net worth area? Pop your mic on. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Probably networking.
Networking, number 1. Number 2 is mindset. If you're around wealthier people that are conducting a lot of business, what happens to your business usually? It's going to go up. It's going to go up big time, because now you're doing business with people of higher net worth than yourself, right? But here's the biggest takeaway. Location is the most important ingredient in real estate. And this is what I always say if you're familiar with Arizona real estate. You're way better off buying a hovel in Arcadia or Paradise Valley than buying a mansion in Surprise. And here is why. Appreciation rates are nearly double in rich areas than outskirt areas, number 1. And number 2, I would write this down too, so you guys realize how important it is to have a long-term mindset and hold. Did you know rents usually double every 10 years? Did you know that statistic? Pop your mic on so I know you guys are listening.
Yeah, listen.
So rents double every 10 years. That means if you're paying rent right now, let's say at $2,000 a month, in 2032, that rent is going to be $4,000 a month. And what do you think the property value is going to be in that amount of time as well, if you're in the right areas? Probably double. And so here, let me just tell you my story so you guys get an idea. So I bought this house in Arcadia, which is a prime piece of real estate. I was 26 years old, okay? I bought it for $390,000. I put $39,500 down, which at the time was a ton of money. I mean, I would just went all in because I said, this location is unbelievable, okay? I put another $65,000 into remodeling this house. So my cost basis was $450,000. Now at the time, I'm thinking, whoa, this is really expensive, right? Now my mortgage is probably $2,200 a month. My carry is a lot, but again, I'm making residual income for those first 2 properties. But this is why location and the value add aspect of remodeling slightly and making things look more beautiful has a huge impact on your guys' net worth. Those little houses I talked about before were great. They were great little base hits. But when I bought that house at 26, 27 years old, and I paid $450,000 for it, do you guys know what that house is worth 5 years later because of the location? Take a guess. Come on, guys, be brave. What is it?
I'm not sure.
500.
What it's worth today?
What it's worth today, that's right. 450,000 was my cost basis 5 years ago.
850.
850. Anyone else have a guess?
I'm gonna say 1.2.
Ooh, wow, that's aggressive. In today's market, the same house that I paid $450,000 for because of the location, because of the value add aspect, because of everything I talked about before as far as long-term debt, that house today is worth $975,000.
Ooh,
Okay.
that's
So
close.
if it gets in a bidding war, you would get that 1.2, Michael.
Maybe. But here's the thing. So I remember definitively, right? Remember guys, in only 4 years' time, what did I do during that time? I bought 3 houses. And in that time, I rented out the first 2, was living in the third one, and then I actually lived with my parents for a couple of months while I was saving enough of money to buy the 4th one. And before I turned 28 years old, I was looking at the numbers, and I remember I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I am a millionaire. And I'll look at this and I'll tell you exactly how. So the first house at that time was worth $545,000. The second house is worth $445,000, and the house was worth $975,000. Now, I didn't own those free and clear at the time, but at the first house, I had $288,000 in equity. The second house, I had $200,000 in equity. And the third house, I had, let me see if I can find it on my notes, $525,000 in equity. And if you add all of that up, that is $1,013,000 in equity. And I also had about $50,000 in the bank. So in 4 years' time, because of those investment properties, because of the leverage, I was able basically to turn that into an unbelievable dynamic. And that's the quickest way to $1 million. I mean, the way to do it is leverage your earned assets and turn them into passive assets as quickly as possible. Duplicate and multiply. So if you can take anything away from this, I want you to look at number one. Number one is this: get rid of all your guys' consumer debt, okay? Get to 0. That's your first goal, okay? Get rid of consumer debt. The second goal is you have to buy your first primary residence. And if you already own your first primary residence, you have to do the third goal: duplicate and multiply. Tell your spouse, tell your kids, hey guys, hey honey, we're gonna rent this guy and we're gonna buy another house, with the idea of owning, then renting, owning, and then renting, owning, and then renting. And if you never sell and you hold and rents continue to double every 10 years, as well as property values, you will be worth millions on top of millions of dollars. I'll give you a metric. 32 years old, I have ownership in over 6 properties. And you know how much money it cost me as down payments and ownership in those properties? Anyone want to take a guess?
Less than 150.
$273,000 to have ownership in those properties. And you fast forward 8 years later, that $273,000 is equivalent to almost $2.5 million in equity and equivalent to about $9,200 a month in passive income. Now think of that. In 8 or 9 years' time, you guys could be doing that as well. What an amazing, amazing trajectory change in your lives. And it changed my life because now I realize the name of the game is I have to convert all my earned income to all my passive income as quickly as humanly possible. Do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And so here are 4 principles of investment success that you guys can write down and take to the bank. And this will help get you there even quicker. The first thing before you make any investment, you have to ask yourself this question: capital preservation. Do you guys know what capital preservation is? Pop your mic on and tell the crowd.
Sounds like you want to keep what you have as far as uh, immediate assets, cash in the bank, and those types of things.
Capital preservation in layman's terms is this. If I give you $50,000, Lisa, I want to make sure with relative certainty I'm going to get that $50,000 back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you make investments and your only partner is the bank, what's the odds of you getting that money back if you make your payments? Pretty certain, I would say, because if I pay my debts over a long period of time, I'm almost 100% certain if I'm buying in the right locations, if I'm buying a value add deal, and I know I can rent it and add value to rents, I almost have 100% certainty that I will get my money back. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
The second thing that you guys want to look at when you start investing is yield. Do you know what yield is? Pop your mic on.
What you make.
Yeah, yield is the percentage of what you make in income, right? Yield is an important thing because yield also dictates the amount of times you get paid throughout a certain time period. So, Brandon, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm still on.
Okay. You were talking about your house in Tucson that you're going to buy, right?
Yes, sir.
And if you're going to rent it, what was the yield? Do you remember that you were going to get on the 6,000 divided by the 40,000 every single year?
15%.
That's right. That's right. And how often were you getting paid on that investment?
Month by month.
Every single month. And this is important, guys, because I want you to look at yield is also the amount of times that you get paid every single year. So the more something pays you consistently, the better investment it is. That's why rental income is some of the most consistent, best investment capital there is, because it pays you every single
month.
That's right. Now look at stocks. This is a great example. Like, let's just take the stock market in general. Why do you think the stock market, based on two different things, isn't better than real estate as far as capital preservation and yield? Anyone want to pop their mic on?
Well, there's so many variables and there's so many hands in the pie. You don't control anything
Exactly.
except what you do with your money.
And you're relying on the company to perform.
Exactly. And in real estate, the only thing you're relying on is yourself and your tenant, and that's it, and the bank, and that's pretty much it. You know, you're your own captain, if that's to say. But here's the other thing: how often does a stock pay you a dividend?
One time a year.
If that, right? Once a quarter, right? Is there a stock out there that you know that pays you every single month?
No.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why real estate is a safer, better investment overall.
Quarterly.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's going to pay you every single month. Now, let's go to part 3. Appreciation, right? Does anyone know what appreciation is? Pop your mic on.
When you have something and then the value increases
Absolutely.
on its own.
Absolutely. So let's say you buy EXP stock at whatever it's trading at, 36, right? And it pops back up to 50. That stock appreciated that spread of $14 a share, right? Same with a house. You buy a house like Brandon for $300,000 and that goes up to $400,000. That's appreciation. Would you all agree?
Yes.
Now, why is real estate better than a stock or any other investment in the forms of appreciation? Do you know the answer to that, Brandon?
What was the question again?
Why is real estate better in the form of appreciation than any other asset class? Do you know the answer to that?
Because it's going with inflation. I would say.
You have the ability to leverage your money safely, where no other asset class will allow you to do that. If you went to the bank and asked the bank, who do you bank with, Brandon?
Chase and Bank of America.
Okay, let's say you walk into Chase, you go, hey Chase, I got 80 grand in the bank. Can you loan me $80,000 to buy EXP stock? What are they going to say?
Nope.
Nope. Why?
Because it's risky for them.
That's right. But let's say you walk into Chase and say, hey Chase, I want to borrow $80,000 to buy a piece of real estate. What are they going to say?
Here we go.
Boom, here you go. How do you sign up? Let's give you the money right now. We want to get it out, right? Because it's safe. And that's how you understand that when banks want to give you money for an asset they know that's collateralized and that will appreciate almost guaranteed over a long period of time, that's a good investment class for you.
What did they give you money for the cars though?
That's a depreciating asset. And so the reason they give you money for that is it's strong cash flow for them. They know that it's a small investment for them, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and they know that you need a car so that you will be paying your car for the next 50, 60, 72 months, whatever your loan term is. But I will tell you this, guys, cars are great toys, but until you reach a threshold that you feel comfortable with, do not be a fool and lease your car and buy something you can't afford. I did that in my 20s, and it probably cost me $1 million in net worth. So just FYI, if you can pay cash for your car or buy something that you can afford until you raise your net worth and raise your real estate holdings, it will beneficiate you greatly into the future, if that makes sense. The second thing, which is the last thing, I don't know if RC is in the room. RC, are you in the room? I don't think he was able to log in. But here's the other thing. So the first for investment, number one is what? Do you guys remember? What was number one?
Capitalization. Don't lose it.
Capital preservation. If I give you money, I don't want to lose that money. What has Warren Buffett said? Don't lose money. That's number one. That's the biggest thing you ever do when you put money to work. I don't want to lose that money, right? Number two. What's number two, Brennan?
Yield.
Yield, right? If I give you money or I invest money, how often am I getting paid? And what's the percentage of my return? That's yield. What's number three, Brennan?
Appreciation.
Appreciation. If I buy this asset, what are the odds and how much will it go up over time? And number four, which you guys probably don't think about, which is a huge one as you start accumulating more money, is tax advantages. You got that? Tax advantages. That's number four. Now, why is real estate a better tax advantage asset than buying stock? Pop your mic on if you know the answer.
Because you can claim the
Appreciation.
Yep. Yeah, so there's a lot more tax loopholes and advantages to owners. As who said depreciation?
I did. Joe Cohen.
Joe. Hey, Joe. Yeah, so the beauty of once you own a primary residence and you shift it to a rental property and you're starting to make money on that property, most likely you are going to depreciate that property over 27 and a half years. Why is that important? Because as you make more and more rent over time, the money that you make from your rent is taxed at a much lower rate than your earned income. So like, let's say for me, I make, $150,000 plus a year in rental income. I only pay like 10% of that money to taxes as opposed to 37% on my earned income. Think of how much savings that is, $20,000, $30,000 a year. Now, what happens if you buy a stock in your regular trading account and you sell it as it pops up in 6 months? Anyone answer that question?
You have to pay pretty much half.
That's correct. You are decimated by the IRS in capital gains, basically. It's like 35 or 38% or something like that. short-term stock sale. It kills you. So another thing I'd write down too is as you acquire EXP stock, you know, through your accounts and etc., and maybe buy some on the retail market, I would encourage you to do that in your retirement accounts so it's tax deferred. So as you, let's say, buy and sell that stock and continue to accumulate more, as we all hope and really believe the stock will continue to go up over time, that you're not getting hosed in taxes if you ever do short-term sales, if that makes sense. So we have about 5 minutes left. I want to open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions I can help answer?
I have a question. You know, I'm in California, hot market. Appreciation is, you know, well over 20% per year. But, you know, we get a lot of economists saying that, you know, it's just a matter of time before we have a bubble burst, things of that nature. So in order for me to buy another property as my primary residence and rent out my existing property, I have to be willing to pay for a $5,000 plus mortgage. Is it better for me to look in different states to just acquire properties and use my equity position?
So yeah, so that's a good question. So again, if you're looking in different states, you obviously can't buy it as a primary residence. But if you're looking in different states, you're going to have to spend 20% as a down payment because it's going to be an investment property, number one. And that may be beneficial to you because California is a crazy market. But what are the highest growth states right now in the US? Florida, Texas, and Arizona, right? So the answer to your question is you can still buy another primary residence in California and pay that $5,000 a month in your mortgage, but you have to make sure that it will rent out after you do the value add play for substantially more than that. And it's just bigger numbers in California, but it's the same metrics. I mean, like, I think my mom, and I remember I was part of a deal with her. We built a duplex in Corona del Mar. And the numbers were astounding because the taxes were astounding. I think her mortgage carry was like $10,000 a month, but she could rent that property out for $17,000 a month, so it penciled out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's just bigger numbers, but you have to make sure the numbers make sense. You have to make sure that current market rents are greater than your overall mortgage carry and expense, if that makes sense, every single month.
It does.
I feel like it's hard to do in Southern California, but yeah, I agree.
I mean, and here's the thing. Southern California in particular is some of the most desirable real estate in the world. And no matter what happens in the macro economy, no one knows if it's going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles, right? But the key is I can tell you with almost 100% certainty in high growth states like Arizona, like Florida, like Texas, even certain parts of California, especially that have beautiful weather, in 20, 30 years time, the property prices that we see now will have doubled or tripled from where they are in today's market. Just telling you that as fact. And rents will have doubled or tripled in 20 or 30 years as well in these high growth markets. Now, in low growth markets where it's cold, where people are moving away from, where there's not huge infrastructure, there's not high paying jobs, move your money to markets that are in demand. Move your money where people are going to. That's would be my recommendation. Does that help answer your question?
Definitely.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a question for you, Michael. Earlier in the presentation, you're going over two things that hinder your growth, hinder your wealth, and you said live in your primary residence forever, and then I missed the second one. What was the second one?
The second one is people sell in 2 to 3 years time and try to pull out the money. It's
Got
a
it.
big mistake. You want to buy something with the intent that you can hold and own forever and leave it to your children. So you can just keep buying more and more real estate and keep holding it. And eventually you're going to own it free and clear. Like of the 6 properties I have, I own almost 3 of them free and clear. You know, so as you accumulate more and more income, you're paying off the first couple of properties to reduce your risk. So if an event like '08 happens again, I can still hold them and rent them out forever, if that makes sense to you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? We got time for one more if anyone has a question. Well, did you guys find this beneficial? Was this helpful?
Very beneficial.
Awesome. Great. Well, I hope all of you guys implement this. And what I can tell you is this, just to recap. Again, take your consumer debts to zero if you can. That's step one. Step two, buy your own primary residence with 10% down, 30-year fixed loan, and make sure it's a value add property in a great location. That means that you're going to live in it probably for a year to 2 years. You're going to rent it out. And then what are you going to do after that? What is the money maker? It's duplicate and multiply. You're going to do that again and again and again. And every 2 to 4 years, you're going to own more and more real estate. And then once your net worth is over 10 million, then I recommend jumping into the big boy stuff like multifamily and commercial and all that other stuff. But until that point, this will serve you extremely well to get you that first $1 million with relative safety and relative ease. So does anyone want to go over what are the 4 principles of investment success before we take off?
You want to have your capital preservation,
Yep.
yield,
Yep.
appreciation, and your tax advantages.
Boom. So before you allocate $1 to any investment, I want you to ask yourself those 4 questions. And if all of those questions are a yes, put your money into that investment. It's a good investment. If there's no in there, then again, it's not the right investment for you. So invest in real estate, invest in yourselves. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time, and hopefully this was really beneficial for you, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and give thanks. Talk to people, text them, tell them how much you really appreciate their help, and have a wonderful holiday, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Appreciate Michael, you're the man.
Thank you, Michael. That's all.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care.
You're the man, Michael, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, my friend. Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too, man, thank you.
Bye.